I'm Marley Caden. It's time for Overlook Stocks, so we'll welcome in George Tsilis, our senior markets correspondent here on Schwab Network. Now, George, we're looking at Ambarella today. They had a big rally on their earnings. I was just looking at their chart, up almost 17% to close out the day. Top performer overall in U.S. equities. What's the story behind this?
Well, I think there's a couple of catalysts for Ambarella, which if you look at it as a stock over the last 5 years, has really been underperforming, but it seems to be potentially reversing based on some very favorable secular trends, and some of these trends are based on their core technologies, which are specializations in system on a chip technologies, which are basically chips that are configurable across multiple application and end markets, and some of the end markets that they supply into include AI processing for advanced imaging solutions, for things like personal imaging detection, HD compression for radar, so autonomous vehicles, complex data analysis, but also things like aerial drones and robotics. And I think this is an interesting secular technology that seems to be back in vogue right now. And I think one of the reasons that Ambarella, if you look at it over the last 5 years, has been underperforming is it was really concentrated in imaging sensing technologies for GoPro cameras. And of course, GoPro as a business hasn't done well because of competition from a lot of international and Asian manufacturers. But Ambarella has been refocusing their technologies more so on industrial end markets, automotive markets, and of course, things like aerial drones, which we know from a secular standpoint are actually very much in trend. So today there was a catalyst also. If you look at the report they listed or posted yesterday, the adjusted earnings per share came in quite a bit ahead of the estimate. So they were already expecting only 5 cents a share, but they beat that estimate with 15 cents of an adjusted profit. And that was a complete turnaround considering last year for the same quarter they lost 13 cents. And if you look at the sales number, it was they beat the estimates by about 5 million at 95.5, so close to 96 million. But that was higher by 49% compared to last year, where they only generated around 64 million. I think the other thing is important enough is the company denoted some improving secular growth trends, not only just in demand for their technologies, but they also denoted in their conference call that average selling prices have actually been firming up, and therefore they actually increased their guidance for next quarter's for the fiscal year's revenue. From 356 million to 379 million. So that's about a 32% increase on a year-over-year clip. And like I said, this quarter, they were only expecting 5 cents. They hit 15 cents. And that's, again, pretty significant because that moved the entire needle for EPS. If you use that 15-cent number and you annualize it at 60 cents, so that was considerably higher than the 38-cent estimate for this year prior to the release of earnings.
And I was going through some of the commentary from the call and some of the questions that were asked, and it looks like a big focus, an unanswered focus, was whether or not they were an M&A target. Did you have any takeaway on that, or see any analyst commentary on A, why that was asked, and B, that their comment was, we have no comment on that? Any thoughts on that response to the question?
Well, I can't speculate, but I will say that if you look at some of the major competitors in this space, and then also considering Ambarella's market capitalization, which is roughly $3 billion, you have to look at companies like Texas Instruments, NXPI, Semiconductors. NVIDIA also, plays in this realm as well, and AMD. So all the names I mentioned are very large companies. And Ambarella seems to be a company that has unique technologies that are particular to, processing imaging, video, and so forth. Very energy efficient chips, and the technologies are really on the edge cloud when it comes to artificial intelligence. They don't provide AI processing, but they provide system on the chips that are unique and specialized for technologies that harness the results from artificial intelligence processing. So I can't speculate, but I would say this: they do demonstrate improving revenue trends. They still have a gap profitability problem, and I think that's subject to higher capital expenditure expenses. But at the same time, their top line sales are significantly improving, and they're moving in the right direction from an adjusted earnings standpoint.
Well, on the backs of the impressive earnings and their very strong guidance, up almost 17% on the day, George, we appreciate you highlighting them for us today.